Well, hello folks, and welcome to this video, which is on how to manage browser URL state with Trongate MX. Now, we had a comment that came in from our good friend Apophis just 9 hours ago. He has contributed to the Trongate framework on GitHub a few times. We're very glad to have him here. And he raised a very important issue. He says, MX is super cool, but I've had headaches with page updates and back buttons. Oftentimes creates partial pages. It's not that I want people to use refresh the page, but they inevitably will. So we're grateful for that feedback. And you'll remember that I said Trongate gets updated all the time. So surprise, surprise, Apophis, if you're watching, we have a new feature, and that's what I'm going to cover here. Now, just to demonstrate what I think he was talking about here, let's imagine we're working on the Trongate module market, which I am. And here's a section down here for popular items. And I'm going to, well, first of all, have a look at the URL. Do you see how it says module-market? Okay, so I'm going to click View All. You can see that the page has loaded, that's all beautiful, but the URL is the same. The URL has not changed. So if we hit refresh, we go right back to the start again. And even more concerning, if we click into a page and then press the back button, well, it takes us somewhere else completely. So this is a challenge, and my friends, we have a solution. I'm going to take just 1 minute to explain the solution. You're all going to be really confused, and then I'm going to show you the solution in terms of code, and you're all going to be amazed at how easy this is. So the solution is MX push URL, the MX push URL attribute. So what this is going to do is when we add it onto one of the elements, one of the MX elements, let's say, well, it's going to push the URL that we've just queried onto the address bar dynamically. So you're going to see the address bar change, right? But the second thing that's going to happen is it's going to add that address that has been dynamically sent to the address bar into the browser history. Now, there's actually even more than that going on. It's going to make sure that the current page does not equal the last page on the browser history so that it doesn't clutter up your browser history and stuff. There's a ton of really, really cool stuff, and you're all you're all probably really confused. But let me show you how easy this is and prepare to be amazed. So, this is the module market. I know that we're not working on it. See how it says find your next module? Find your next module, right? This is the page. Now, if we take this part with popular items, view all. So let me see here. We've got popular items. Here it is. And this says view all. This is the view all button. If I add an X here, see how we've got a little X here, right? This is that button. So all I'm going to do is add one new attribute, and it's MX push URL equals true, and save it. And now if I give the page a refresh, I'm going to click view all, and everything works as normal, but have a look at the URL. And now the URL has changed. And the beautiful thing here is if you hit refresh, everything's good. And even if you press the back button, everything is good. And in fact, I've applied this to the entire module market. So if I click something like this, and then something like this, okay, and all of this is Trongate MX, by the way, and look at this, we can refresh, we can hit the back button, refresh, everything is absolutely solid. And can you believe it? It's only one little attribute, MX push URL. Okay, so how about if I walk you through a little demonstration and perhaps you can try this yourself, okay? So let's go back to our MX tutorial thing that we've been working on. And inside our welcome controller, let's make a little public. I'll make this bigger for you here. Let's make a public method called greeting. Okay, oh, pardon me. So it's function greeting. There we go. And this one is going to read a name from the URL. I'm going to say data name is segment 3. Then I'm going to say data view module is welcome. And then data view file equals greeting. And then I'm going to load up a template. Why not? And the template is going to be the public template that comes with Trongate. And I'm going to pass in the data. All right. Now, before we make the greeting view file, go to your templates folder and go into public.php. You'll probably find it looks a bit like this. And what I want you to do is in the head section, maybe it looks different, but it doesn't matter. Inside the head section, we're going to add a little script here, source equals, and we're going to say js/Trongate-mx.js. Now, it's going to get a little bit lost if we just run this. So before I forget, make sure, you may not need to do this, but make sure you have a base element here. So it's base href equals, and we're going to chuck in the base URL. Now, you may not need to do that, folks. You probably don't actually, but just make sure you've got that and make sure you've got Trongate MX, okay? So now, over in the welcome module here, I'm going to just make a little views folder. I don't know if you've got one, but I'm going to make one here. If you've already got one, that's fine. And we're going to make a new file called greeting.php. We're going to have inside our greeting view file an h1, and we're going to say hello, comma, and using PHP short tags, we're going to echo this name value here. You can see I've used the out function just for a little bit of security. Going to save. And now if we go to our base URL, then welcome, then greeting, you can see I've had a test drive, then /David. It says hello David, okay? No surprises and no big deal. So now let's have a little bit of fun. We'll make up a button here, and this button is going to say John, and we're going to say mx get equals, and we'll chuck in welcome greeting, but this time instead of David, it's going to say John, okay? Now, by the way, in other examples, we've had a result div. You can do that if you want, but I'm going to show you another little attribute here in just a second that you might like. So I'll say mx target equals h1. I want to target this h1 element. And by the way, we want to mx select the h1. So it's going to head out to this URL, and we're going to be selecting the h1. Now there's a deliberate mistake coming up, so stay cool, and I'll show you the deliberate mistake here. Because when we click John, the headline goes massive. What on earth is going on here? Well, if you inspect, you can see down here that it's grabbing this element, the h1 element, and it's chucking it inside the h1. So we've got an h1 within an h1. This gives me an opportunity to very quickly introduce you to another MX attribute, which is called MX swap. This lets you determine precisely what part of the target element will be swapped out. So we're going to just say for this example, MX swap equals, and we're going to, by the way, I should say the swapping here, it's referring to the target element. So what part of the target element do you want to swap? I'm going to say outer HTML, which means I want the entire thing to be swapped out. So save that, and we're going to have a little refresh. And thank you very much indeed. Don't it make you feel good? All right. So now let's add a few more buttons in with some different names. All right. So I'll do one in. We'll go one here. I'll do one in. We'll do another one. I'm going to say Sarah. And I'll have another button. As many as you want. We'll have one that says Charlie. Maybe. And finally, I'm going to have a button down here. And this one is going to say Jack. I hope that you can understand what's happening here, folks. It's querying different URLs here. And it's swapping out the headline, okay? But notice that the URL stays the same. See how it always stays on David, the URL, or the third segment always stays on David, okay? So all we have to do is we're going to add in MX push URL equals true, and it's as simple as that. Now let's do that for all of these, right? So here we go. Push URL is true. Push URL is true. And finally, whoop, here we go. Wait for it. Push URL is true. Okay, now save that. Refresh. You can see that we're on the David thing again. The URL says David, no big deal. I'm going to click on John. You miserable thing. Do you know why that is? It's because the feature is so new. It's so new that I need to grab this from GitHub. Oh, this is so embarrassing. But here we go. Public JS. Yeah, I've literally just finished this feature. How's that for professionalism? I must be the first person in the history of YouTube to do this, you know. All right, so this one is 11.95. This one's a little bit bigger. Save. Okay. All right, here we go again. So we've got David. I'm going to click and look at the URL. It says John. I'm going to go to Sarah now and look at the URL. It says Sarah. How about Charlie? It says Charlie. Now let's refresh. Charlie works just fine. Let's go back to Sarah. That's fantastic. Let's go back to John, and that is fantastic as well. All right, folks, that's the end of the tutorial, but just to let you know, I've added a little bit of JavaScript here with a counter. You don't need to do this at all. It's just to show you or to give you an idea of what's happening and how this works. So when I refresh, I'm refreshing. You'll see it says 0, 1 second. These are the number of seconds passed. So if I click here, you can see that the counter here is not changing because it's all just using Trongate MX. But if I hit refresh, we go back to 0 seconds past. So when you are refreshing, just so you know, it is a legitimate refresh, if that makes sense. If I click into this one and then hit the back button, top left, again, we go back to 0 there. Now, again, you don't need to do that, but I'll chuck this on the GitHub repo just in case you're interested. And that is the end of this tutorial. Cheers!